Hi everyone, my name is Eva. I'm a wellness consultant, and today I wanted to discuss the 10 Commandments with you, and also discuss who Moses was, who explained or displayed the 10 Commandments. And then we're going to get into I'm going to share three different herbs that I think might help you for this coming season. Winter season's coming, so as you can imagine, there's going to be colds and flus going around. But I'm going to start off with the Nicene Creed. And reading it in English and then in Spanish to set the tone. But I also wanted to mention that I brought my rosary here. And as you can remember, you want to be praying this on a daily basis in the evenings or in the mornings. And you want to start with the Our Father, and then the three Hail Marys, and then the Our Father, and then you start on the left, and then you go all the way around. You do 10 Hail Marys, an Our Father, and then all the way around to the end, which is about 50 Hail Marys. Okay, so we'll start with the Nicene Creed in English to kind of set the tone. Thank you for being with me here. I think it's very special, and I'm sending you good vibes through the camera here. I also actually want to tell you about a story regarding this color shirt that I'm wearing. It just came to me as I was preparing for tonight's video. I had an experience when I was, I think I was deep in sleep paralysis, I think it's what it's called. And this happened when I was in my room, and it was morning time, and I was asleep, but I could still move my eyes. And as you know from sleep paralysis, you're not able to move, but your brain is still functioning, and you're in between being asleep and being awake. And for me, this moment wasn't scary. It was just a moment of kind of just being aware of my surroundings. And at the foot of the table, the foot of the bed was the door, and then to my left was a desk and a chair. And while I was half awake, half asleep, I glanced to the left, and it was morning time, and it was that time of the morning where the light's coming in through the curtains, but it's not completely bright. And I could see from the corner of my eye a woman standing on a chair. And I figured I'd share it with you because it reminds me of this shirt. The color that she was wearing was similar to this, and I did look up the significance of this color. It has to do with sophistication, maturity, and because I wanted to know why she had appeared to me, it was my hallucination, I'm sure. It was my brain overacting. I just felt protected, like it was an angel, maybe a descendant of mine, and she had her hair pulled back, maybe split in the middle, pulled back in a ponytail, and it was black, from what I could remember, maybe black or brown, and she had this same colored shirt. She was wearing something like this, but it had sleeves, I think. And she had a straight black skirt. And that's very traditional from in the country where I'm from. Of course, I grew up here in the States. I moved here when I was 6. I'm mostly American. And it was just a very profound moment for me, and I wanted to share that with you. And it was kind of special. So it came to me because I was wearing this shirt. Okay, so again, I'm going to read the Nicene Creed in English and Spanish. That we're going to get into the story of Moses, the 10 Commandments, and then the 3 or 1 herbs that I'm going to review with you. So the Nicene Creed. I believe in one God, the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, of all things visible and invisible. I believe in one Lord Jesus Christ, the only begotten Son of God, born of the Father before all ages, God from God, light from light, true God from true God, begotten, not made, sorry, this is a hard word to pronounce, consubstantial with the Father. Through him all things were made. For us men, for our salvation, he came down from heaven by the Holy Spirit, was incarnate of the Virgin Mary, and became man. For our sake, he was crucified under Pontius Pilate. He suffered death and was buried, and rose again on the 3rd day in accordance with the scriptures. He ascended into heaven and is seated at the right hand of the Father. He will come again in glory to judge the living and dead, and his kingdom will have no end. I believe in the Holy Spirit, the Lord, the giver of life, who proceeds from the Father and the Son, who with the Father and the Son is adored and glorified, who has spoken through the prophets. I believe in one holy, Catholic, and Apostolic Church. I confess one baptism for the forgiveness of sins, and look forward to the resurrection of the dead and the life of the world to come. Amen. Okay, so now we'll do it in Spanish. Again, this is just to set the tone, to get into the right mindset of what we're doing here, and to bring God, his Spirit, here near us. I think it'll make everything a lot more special. All right, so this is in Spanish. Creo en un solo Dios, Padre Todopoderoso, Creador del cielo y la tierra, de todo lo visible y lo invisible. Creo en un solo Señor Jesucristo, Hijo único de Dios, nacido del Padre antes de todos los siglos, Dios de Dios, luz de luz, Dios verdadero de Dios verdadero, engendrado, no creado, en la misma naturaleza del Padre, porque en todo fue hecho, que por nosotros los hombres y por nuestra salvación bajo del cielo, y por obra del Espíritu Santo se encarnó de María la Virgen y se hizo hombre, y por nuestra causa fue crucificado en tiempos de Poncio Pilato, padeció y fue sepultado, y resucitó al tercer día, según las Escrituras, y subió al cielo, y está sentado a la derecha del Padre, y de nuevo vendrá con gloria para juzgar a los vivos y muertos, y su reino no tendrá fin. Creo en el Espíritu Santo, Señor y dador de vida, que procede del Padre y del Hijo, que con el Padre y el Hijo recibe una misma adoración y gloria, y que habló por los profetas. Creo en la Iglesia, que es una santa, católica y apostólica. Confieso que hay un solo bautismo para el perdón de los pecados. Espero la resurrección de los muertos y la vida del mundo futuro. Amén. Okay, I hope you can appreciate that. I love the sound in Spanish. It's very special. Okay, so we're gonna get into Moses. The story of Moses. I felt that I first thought that I could tell you about only this the Ten Commandments, but I didn't think it made sense to only tell you about the Ten Commandments and not give you the full story about who Moses is. I would highly recommend, if you have an extra 2 hours here and there in the morning and at night, if you have an opportunity to do it this holiday also, which is the time where I used to watch a movie about Moses, who he was, what he did, his whole story, to kind of really immerse yourself in his life and understand the time frame, what they wore, so you get an immersive experience of who he was and what he experienced and the purpose and what it truly all means. I'll give you a summary here of what is shared in this illustrated Bible. The reason for me sharing all these stories, quite honestly, is that I actually have brought a different story to my dad the other day, and I was shocked that he was not familiar with the story. I feel like these stories of the Bible are really not being celebrated, or they're being forgotten, and the appreciation of the art history, the artifacts, and the time frame and what these people went through is being forgotten, kind of like water being run through our fingers. It really is like currency running through our fingers, and it's all this richness of history and lessons and experience that we're not taking advantage and discussing during our day-to-day. I think it's important so that we're setting the tone of our mentality and where our minds are. It's not really just stuck on the mundane, and we were stuck in traffic and conversations that don't really have depth. I feel like people appreciate when you have knowledge of something like the Bible. It's the number one sold book in the world, and I think it will connect you with more people it'll open more opportunities for yourself. And so the reason for me reviewing these stories with you is because so that we can keep these stories alive, and we can keep God's spirit alive in us, and we can hold each other accountable, and share these stories amongst each other, and have better conversations about these stories that are really very important and significant, and will give you hope and faith that you're always, being cared for, and God is watching over you, and He's protecting you. He does want a relationship with you. That's the reason why I'm bringing these stories to you too, so that you can open up your heart, open up your mind, and really listen to your intuition, and hear for when He is trying to connect with you, and help you through your life, through your insecurities. And so this is why I'm bringing these stories to you. And so the story that I actually brought to my dad, I'll share with you here, that he was not very familiar with. My mom actually did know a little bit of it. It was Solomon's Temple. I'll just read you the subtitle here. It's one of Solomon's greatest achievements was the building of a magnificent, sorry, that's a tough one to pronounce, temple in Jerusalem, which housed the Ark of the Covenant and a massive bronze altar for sacrifice. And it just shows here, the beauty of this. It says, this is a colored print from a copper engraving made in 1630 by Matthews Moraine, was inspired by the description of the temple in 1 Kings 6. The Israelites had little experience of temple building, and the design of the structure owed much to Phoenician examples. So this is the temple, as you can see. And so again, my dad didn't know about this, and he's been going to church for years. I'm Roman Catholic. We don't really discuss or go too much into depth about the stories, which is unfortunate. I feel like the Christian religion really does go into depth into these stories. I really love having conversations with them, because they truly take the time to read the Bible and to keep these stories alive. I've been able to connect with Christians all the way from being Hawaii, Arizona, virtually. I joined a church called Hope Church in Arizona during the time of COVID for 3 months. I did that and joined their Bible study because it was a time of uncertainty, and it was refreshing and really beautiful to connect with people again through stories and something that has been around for years. Okay, so we'll get into the story of Moses. Okay. So this is Moses. This is the subtitle here. And you can find this in this quote here in Deuteronomy. I have to find the pronunciation of this. Sorry, I'm just going to take 2 seconds. To find the right pronunciation of this, I have difficulty pronouncing these. Deuteronomy. I was way off. Deuteronomy 34, that's chapter 34, verse 10 and 11. No prophet has risen in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face, who did all those signs and wonders the Lord sent him to do in Egypt. This is a statue of Moses. As you can see, it says he is the chosen one. The horns of on Moses' head in the 16th century sculpture by Puro, I don't know if I can pronounce this right, Funkavila. Okay. This book actually is really sweet because it gives you kind of like a timeline of where Moses was and the dates included. So it says here, 1526 BC, Moses is born into a family descended from Levi. He is hidden among the bulrushes to escape Pharaoh's rule. Born as an enslaved Israelite, raised in an Egyptian palace, a killer who was forced to flee, Moses may not seem like the obvious candidate for a great leader. Yet this was the man God chose to lead his people out of slavery. Moses was born into the family descended from Levi, Jacob's third son, at the time when Pharaoh was ordering that every Hebrew baby boy be killed because of his concern about growing Hebrew numbers. So the Pharaoh sent out to kill all male babies because he was afraid of the growth within the Hebrew population of males, and that they would somehow take over. And so that was the Pharaoh's fear, and that's what he set out to do. Moses was hidden first at home, then by his mother among the Nile reeds. He was discovered by Pharaoh's daughter, who adopted him. And we all know the story where he was found by the Pharaoh's daughter, I guess. I mean, I heard it many times, and it's really interesting. The life of Moses, according to Jewish tradition, Moses spent 40 years in Pharaoh's household. However, after killing an Egyptian enslaver for mistreating an Israelite, Moses fled to Midian, where he spent the next 40 years in the desert. So the life of Moses, he spent the first 40 years of his life in the Pharaoh's palace, and then he ended up killing an Egyptian and fleeing because that Egyptian had mistreated an Israelite, and he ended up fleeing to Midian, to the desert for 40 years. I'm repeating myself so that you don't fall asleep as I'm reading to you. It was then that God appeared to him, calling Moses to return to Pharaoh, and demand that he free the Israelites. After a series of dramatic plagues, Pharaoh finally yielded and set them free. The final 40 years of Moses' life were spent leading the Israelites through the wilderness to the promised land, a 10-day journey by the usual trade route. But the Israelites wandered for 40 years through the desert because God was angry with them for their lack of faith. Here we go again with that word. Let me just... Deuteronomy. You'll find this in Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 34 and 35. The key movement in this journey took place at Mount Sinai. Here, God made a covenant with the Israelites, giving Moses his laws for them to live by. Moses finally reached the edge of the promised land. His final words recorded in Deuteronomy 32 and 33 bear witness to God's faithfulness to his people and bring words of blessing to each of the 12 tribes in turn. Moses died at the age of 120 on Mount Nebo in full view of the promised land, but never having entered it. The character of Moses. Okay, so this is where it gets a little bit interesting, and I wanted to share this because people talk about saints, they talk about these people. Moses, who's Moses? Who cares? Who was he? And so here it explains what his character was. I'm going to share also an image about how God presents himself to Moses. And then at the very end, I'll share the 10 Commandments and explain what they are. Okay, so the character of Moses. The story suggests that Moses was a mixture of opposing characteristics. He is shown as often tempestuous, as demonstrated when he killed the Egyptian enslaver. That's Exodus chapter 2, verse 11, 12. Or when his future father-in-law's daughter were harassed. Or when he got angry with Israelites for complaining. I'm going to skip the verse chapters just for the sake of making this a little bit shortcutting it because it's going to get too long. Moses also could be timid, telling God that he could not lead the Israelites or go to Pharaoh's because he was not a good speaker. Which was when, and this is, okay, I'll tell you this part. You can find that in Exodus 4, chapter 4, verse 10. Which was when God appointed his brother Aaron to act as his spokesman. Yet, and I share that so that you can find proof that Moses was afraid of public speaking. He was human. Yet Moses was eventually courageous, seeking an audience with Pharaoh and making demands for the release of his people who had been enslaved. He was also genuinely humble, for although he was the only man with whom God spoke face to face, he never abused his privilege, trusting his cause to God when others opposed or attacked him. The significance of Moses. So this is important so you understand why he's important in the Bible. Scholars agree that no one towers over the Old Testament or over Jewish life even today like Moses. He was a civil leader, a judge, a prophet, a priest, and an intercessor. Sorry, I need to find the right pronunciation of this because this is silly that I don't know how to pronounce this. And this is important to me because this is how I learned English growing up. I made sure that I had really good pronunciation in school, and I was lucky that I had teachers who were happy to repeat themselves and explain how to pronounce things correctly. So give me 2 seconds, because I do want to make sure that I am pronouncing this correctly.
Intercessor.
Intercessor. I get that dopamine hit just by hearing that right. Intercessor. He was a judge, a prophet, a priest, and an intercessor for the people. He was both a friend of God. The Lord would speak to Moses face to face as one speaks to a friend. You'll find that in Exodus chapter 33, verse 11. And the mediator between God and his people. Through Moses, God revealed his laws, which is the 10 Commandments. These showed what God himself was like and shaped the way his people lived. It was Moses who led Israel and formed it into God's community. Moses was so associated with the covenant and the law that people came to speak simply of Moses when referring to the first 5 books of the Old Testament in the New Testament. In the Old Testament. In the New Testament, Moses is highly honored as one of who prepared the way for Jesus through his preparation of God's people. It was he who first appointed toward the coming of the Messiah, telling the people of Israel that God would one day raise up for you a prophet like me from among you, from your fellow Israelites. You must listen to him. Deuteronomy 18:15. I think I pronounced that wrong, so let's look it up again, just because I gotta get it right. Deuteronomy. So that's the end of that piece for who Moses was. And then, so we're going to get into when and how God appears to Moses. This is an image that I'll show you. It says, God reveals himself to Moses in this painting by Raphael, 1483 to 1520 estimated is when it was painted. Moses is shown with his sandals off as instructed by God, who is depicted in person speaking from within the burning bush. God is actually only speaking through from what I can remember in watching that video of God, is they only show the burning bush with God's voice speaking through it. Here you'll see an image of God, but I'm sure it was just a bush of fire. Moses hides his face because he is afraid to look at God. You'll find this in Exodus 3, verse 6. And so this is the image, as you can see. That's Moses covering his face and God coming out from the fire and bushes. Exodus 3, God calls Moses. One of the Bible's recurring themes is that God often reveals himself to people who are not looking for him or who do not seem to deserve him. Moses fulfilled both these criteria. His unexpected encounter with God changed his life and that of Israel, as the God of Israelites' history became the God of their future, acting through Moses to determine the nation's character for all time. Sorry, just pausing to make sure that I'm not so close to the camera. Okay. All right. Moses spent 40 years in a position of privilege in Pharaoh's palace and was powerful in speech and action. But his circumstances changed when he had to flee the kingdom after killing an Egyptian for mistreating one of his own people, an Israelite. He went to Midian, where he met and married the daughter of a priest and had a son and spent 40 years. However, he was about to discover that God had a significant part for him to play in his plan for Israel. One day, Moses was tending the flock on Mount Oreb when he saw a bush suddenly on fire. This was not unusual in hot, arid places, but although this bush flared, which means it was significantly more fire than usual, it did not burn up. So the bush did not burn completely. Moses went to look more closely. As he did, God called him by name from within the bush, then said, "Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground. I am the God of your father." Oh my gosh, so I have to stop there because we're getting to this part, and the reason why I wanted to share this piece here is because I had an epiphany about there's a small section here that I'll read to you that brought me back to a book that I watched a YouTuber share, and it's very profound because you'll see. I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Moses hid his face, terrified. And as you can imagine, he's terrified because he had killed an Egyptian, and he knew that was he was terrified because he didn't know what God had planned for him. And it's so funny, that we can relate to that because we always are terrified in the uncertainty of what's going to happen to us before it actually does happen to us. So we can all relate. God said that he had seen the Israelites' misery in Egypt. So the Israelites are suffering in Egypt, under the control of Egypt, was concerned at their suffering and had come to rescue them and take them to their own land. Then he commanded Moses, "So now go, and I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." Moses protested that he could not possibly do this, but God said would be with him. God said he would be with him, and that one day Moses would stand on his mountain again and know the truth of what God said. Moses felt utterly inadequate. Who am I that I should bring the Israelites out of Egypt? God showed him that this was not about Moses, it was about God. So I'm having an epiphany right now because these stories do have to do something with me, but I'm also bringing to light God and his stories to you. So again, God showed him that this was not about Moses, who was a prophet. It was about God. Moses replied that the Israelites would ask him the name of the God in whom he spoke, for he had truly met God. They would expect Moses to know his name. The name that God now revealed showed his very character. I am who I am, Yahweh, in Hebrew, which is related to the verb to be, adding that Moses could say, the Lord, he sent me to you. What God had said to Moses was, my name is I am, but you can call me he is. God was underlining that he is never a moment when he is not. He always is, always there, always working, always powerful, always providing what is needed. So I had an epiphany there because there was a woman, her name is Brenda Turner, and she is a YouTuber that shared a couple of different books that I meant to look into, but I'm going to share them with you. And she kept talking about I am who I am. I don't know which is what he explains here. What God had said to Moses was, my name is I am, but you can call me he is. God was underlining that there is never a moment that he is not. So I am, he's saying that I am, he always is, always there. So I am, he's always there. He's always working. He's always powerful. And he's always providing what is needed. So he is. And I guess God he speaks to us in parables and a little bit like poetry, right? So it's our responsibility to kind of decode how he talks to us, and he makes it into a puzzle, a fun puzzle, a challenge, so that we can really think and really it can really sink in, and you have this epiphany and say, oh, this is what he was saying, this is what he was trying to get to. And if he were to say it in more simple terms to us, it would be uninteresting and unexciting. And so I'm sure God has his ways of expressing himself so that he makes it a little bit into a riddle, and it's a puzzle for us to put together for when he speaks. And so let me get into the two books that she mentioned and shared. Again, her name is Brenda Turner, and if I can find a link of hers or the name of a YouTube video that she's made, I'll share it in the description box so you can go back and find that later. So one of the books she mentions about the word I am is called A Course in Miracles this was written in 1976 by Helen Schuckman. And I think the very essence of these books that she mentions is it's about love, and it's about God doing things with love. And the other book she mentions is called, which I have heard of it before actually, now that I think of it, The Law of Divine Compensation on Work and Money and Miracles by Marianne Williamson. And I think the importance there of this book she mentions is when you're building a business, it's important to do it out of love. And I connected that with something that Ayrton Senna, who was a race car driver in the early 90s and late 80s, he was a well-known race car driver in Brazil, and he was descended from Italy, and his descendants came from Italy, and he mentions the same thing. It made me think of that in the documentary that was made of him, which is an hour or 2 hours and 40 minutes long. Then I can share that in the description box below as well, the title, and you can find that for yourself. I'm not sure that I can share the link, but I'll certainly share the title so you can find that on YouTube. But he mentions the same thing. When you do something with love and with faith, you're bound to reach your goal no matter what, and you'll do it through God's love and his faith, and his direction and the intuition that you hear inside yourself to do the right thing in creating your business. And I hope that's helpful for anyone that's trying to create a business. I think it's always important to include love, which is what Brenda Turner mentions, is to include love in the business that you're doing, because if you're not including that, then you kind of lose yourself, you lose its purpose on why it is that you're doing it. And so I'm going to get into the last piece, which is the 10 Commandments. This is getting to be a really long video, but I wanted to make sure that I made this into one whole video, because if I didn't, then I feel like it would be all over the place and I would never get into everything in depth. So this is the last part. Thank you for still watching. If you're still watching. Okay, so this is the 10 Commandments. And I'll show you a painting of Moses. This is Receiving the Law in Moses with the Tablets of the Law, 1600, by Guido Reni. Moses receives the written tablets of the stone the day after the commandments and the laws had first been spoken to him by God. So you can see this is a very powerful image of Moses with part of the 10 Commandments. And what I can tell you also, what I've actually had a discussion with my father about the 10 Commandments, was that the 10 Commandments can be split into 2 parts, really, and you can keep it very simple. The first 5 have to do with loving God. When you follow the first 5 commandments, you are simply loving God. The second part of the 10 Commandments is really loving your neighbor or loving people in general. Really simple. So if you follow those 2 rules, there's no way that you can get into trouble and not follow the rest of the 10 Commandments. And I really love that simplicity of that, so that you don't ever have to think about, oh, am I doing something wrong here? You simply think, are you loving God through doing something? Are you loving your neighbor or the person that you're interacting with through doing something? When you think of those 2 things, then you're fine. So the 10 Commandments you can find in Exodus 19, chapter 19, chapter 19 and 20, verse 17. We're almost there. The 10 Commandments. Since their rescue from Egypt, the Israelites had experienced God's provision and protection. Now they would encounter his presence. I love the word presence because I always feel like there's presence with me and I feel protected. Hence the name of my channel, Ambitious Presence. That name actually came to me while I was sitting at my kitchen table and I felt like there was a presence. So logically I named it Ambitious Presence. Okay. The Ten Commandments. Since their rescue from Egypt, the Israelites had experienced God's provision and protection. Sorry, I'm reading this to you again. Now they would encounter his presence, which would change them forever. God was about to reveal himself, making them his own nation and giving his people laws to live by. 3 months after they had left Egypt, the Israelites arrived at Mount Sinai, where God had first revealed himself to Moses. In the first several acts, oh my goodness, I don't know how to pronounce this.
Ascent.
In the first of several ascents over the coming days, Moses climbed the mountain to meet with God. God told Moses that if the Israelites obeyed God and kept his covenant, they would become his treasured possession, a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Sounds attractive, right? To be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. That's what God promised the Israelites. Moses took God's message down to the people, returning with leaders' agreement to obey. Sorry, I'm going to read that again. Moses took God's message down to the people, returning with the leaders' agreement to obey. God then promised to reveal himself to Moses in a powerful way on the third day. The people purified themselves for what was to occur. On the third day, thunder, lightning, thick cloud, and a trumpet blast came from nowhere. The people trembled, but Moses led them to the foot of the mountain, which was covered in smoke as God came down in fire. That's really scary. But it's God, so nothing will happen. It's God. And he's there to, to make them a kingdom of priests and holy nation, and a holy nation. And if you are a good person, you don't need to fear God, because if you have God in your heart, you will never fear him. My mama always told me that, and it's true, that if you have a good heart, there's no reason to fear God, because he's full of love and he's here to help you. God called Moses to the summit once again, but sent him down to say that no one must follow except for Aaron. Sorry, I'm going to read that again. God called Moses to the summit once again, but sent him down to say that no one must follow except for Aaron. So he was going just with Aaron. Moses returned to the mountain, and God gave him the commands that would help his redeemed people live in freedom. I'm not going to read these because it doesn't go into depth on the reasoning or what they mean, and I'm going to read them off to you from what I found. Known in Hebrew as the Ten Commandments, the Ten Commandments are the only commandments spoken directly to the people by God. They are the basis of the Jewish law and have formed the backbone of Abrahamic civilization ever since. I'm looking for this book that I was rereading, actually, but I don't have it with me. It is by Adam Braun. What is so cute, it's so touching, is that he actually, in the book that he wrote, Pencils of Promise. Let me look it up, actually. So the book is called The Promise of a Pencil, and it's by Adam Braun. And in the book, because I was rereading it, he goes to Guatemala and he meets this indigenous man, and he's from this, I can't believe I don't have the book in front of me, but I'll share it the next time. I think he's in a city called Palestina. Yeah, something like that. And he said that this indigenous man invited him to stay with his family because the indigenous man didn't want a hand-me-down. He said he wanted to learn how to speak English so that he could teach his children and he could teach the community that he was in. And so Adam was brave enough to go down and travel on a bus for 2 hours to get to his house. And he stayed with him, I think, 4 days. And what was so funny that Adam mentioned in the book is that he was sitting with this indigenous man speaking into a recording, and he was reading the Bible, but Adam is Jewish. So he felt it was ironic that he was reading the Bible and he's Jewish in a city called Palestina. And that just came to me, and I felt it was so funny, and I felt like I should share it with you. I'll share the name of the book, and this is what it looks like, as you can see. It's so special that some people take the time to help people around the world. He's not only Adam has helped build, I think, almost 600 schools worldwide, in Africa and as well, and it goes to show you what one person can do to help millions, and that creates a ripple effect in a good way, where if you help somebody and you are good-natured at all times, it does create a ripple effect, and that carries on to others. And I use him as an example because I think he's done so much for so many people. Okay, back to the 10 Commandments. So I'm going to read what they are and the meaning of them. The 10 Commandments. I, the Lord, am your God. You shall not have any other gods besides me. That's number 1. These are the kind of questions that you should be asking yourself about this commandment. Do I love God with all my heart? Am I truly thankful for the gift of God's love for me? Do I show this by loving others? So again, I, the Lord, am your God. You shall not have any other gods besides me. In that sense, he means that in the Bible, you see that some of these people had misbehaved and they were worshiping gods made out of golden calves or golden goats, which is against the first commandment. So that's just an example so you understand. Second commandment is you should not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. And these are the questions you're supposed to ask yourself when about this second commandment. Do I ever use God's or Jesus's name when I am angry? Do I always use the name of God and Jesus with respect and love? Do I always use the names of God and Jesus with respect and love? So that's the second commandment. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Third commandment. Remember to keep holy the Sabbath day. Sundays, I believe, is the day that you should be keeping it holy. Do I honor God by what I do on Sundays? Do I spend time in prayer with my family and with the people of God, the church at the Mass? That's the third commandment. Fourth commandment is honor your father and mother. Do I love, respect, and obey my parents, others who care for me? Do my words and actions show this all the time? My voice is getting raspy from speaking now for a while. Sorry about that. We're on the fifth commandment. You shall not kill. This is very obvious. Do I show respect for the gift of life by caring for all of God's creatures, especially people? Have I ever wanted to harm or hurt anyone? Sixth commandment, you shall not commit adultery. Do I respect my own body and the bodies of others as gifts from God? Do I use my body in ways that would please God? Seventh commandment, you shall not steal. Have I ever taken something that belongs to someone else? Am I as careful with other people's things as I am with my own things? 8, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. Do I always tell the truth? Do I ever lie or hurt anyone by what I say? 9, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife. Am I ever jealous of someone else's family? So the key here is do not be jealous. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife. Am I grateful for the love that my own family shows me? Here, as you can tell, it's not good to lust over the neighbor's wife. 10, you shall not covet anything that belongs to your neighbor. And so you should be asking yourself, am I thankful for all that I have? Am I ever jealous or greedy? 10, you shall not covet anything that belongs to your neighbor. Again, jealousy, envy, not a good thing. Not a good thing. So again, as my dad said, as my father said, the 10 commandments can be split into 2. The first 5, if you love God, you're good. You will not do wrong or do bad if you simply love God. And the second half of the Ten Commandments, do I love? And you ask yourself, well, you tell yourself, if you love your neighbor, you will never steal, you will never lie to them. So that's pretty much it for the 10 Commandments. I'm gonna read one of the herbs, but because I feel like this video has gotten to be too long. Okay, this is benzion. Benzion has been used in the East since antiquity as medicine, as incense. The reason why I chose this is because this is what it looks like at the bottom. And its properties are warming, soothing, anti-inflammatory, and that's really important always to have in your body. Stress will create inflammation in your body, and you want to make sure that you don't surround yourself around people who stress you out. And it's always good to use these type of herbs to create anti-inflammatory things in your body, so you're not constantly feeling like you have inflammation. It is inhaled benzion is useful for cold and flu, for clearing mucus from the system, and can soothe sore throats and help to restore a lost voice. And it's also, I read, is good for cold sores on the mouth and on inside of the mouth. It's emotionally calming in a crisis, warming and comforting in times of loneliness, and helps with anxiety and nervous tension. So that's one of the herbs. I'm not going to get into the other ones because this video has gotten to be too long. Thank you for watching. And we're going to get into a couple other stories that I'm really excited to share with you. Again, thank you for watching, and have a great day.